YouTube. So I've got an interesting problem for you. It's a problem I've never seen before. You know, I find the most interesting thing about automotives is the diagnostic end of things, and this is a diagnostic puzzle. I'm going to show you the video in real time as I work through the problem, and then I'll show you the answer as to what actually happened. It's the kind of video that you may want to pause partway through and think through in your own mind, how would you investigate this if it came through your door? I hope you enjoy it.
So how many here have burped a car engine? We're going to do that today. This is my 98 Dodge truck. And first I'm going to show you the problem. It's actually easier to hear this than it is to see it, but we'll see what we come out with. Now, I changed the water pump in this truck back about 6 months ago, and since then, at startup, the heater core is making gurgling noise when I turn the car over first thing in the morning. If I wait and turn it over a few minutes later, it doesn't happen again. So listen carefully, listen for this gurgling noise on startup. Here we go.
Okay, if the heart of a cooling system is the water pump, then the brains of the system has to be equally shared between the thermostat and the lowly radiator cap. The thermostat, of course, is responsible for staying closed until the engine reaches operating temperature. And so ironically, its first mission is to allow the engine to quickly warm up without cooling it off by too much cold water. Then when the engine reaches operating temperature, the thermostat opens, allowing water to get back to the radiator. Now we've got trapped air in our system, and I want to discharge that air back to the radiator and then out to atmosphere. In a sense, I need to burp my radiator. And so I'm going to raise the engine operating temperature to the point that the thermostat opens. That should allow air to be pushed back through the water pump and back into the radiator, and then hopefully discharged to atmosphere. That's what we're going to do now. Now, the more I understand about radiator caps, the more I realize that the radiator cap is the underestimated genius of the whole system. The radiator caps that are made today are a two-part process, and they have two seals. There's the inner seal here and the outer seal here. Now, the outer seal almost never blows. It's the one that opens up when a car totally overheats and you see it parked at the side of the road with steam escaping out the engine hood, and it almost never leaks. Except in emergencies. The inner seal is the one that leaks very commonly, and it's got a spring on it that allow it to open up. And when the inner seal opens up, radiator fluid follows back down this tubing into the coolant reservoir. And when the engine is turned off later, the fluid can be drawn back up via siphon suction type system back into the radiator to be used again. And so this coolant reservoir allows a free flow of fluid back and forth using a siphon mechanism just based on heating and cooling of the fluid to keep the fluid in the car as opposed to on the ground. Now, if this system works properly, it should allow for a system whereby air bubbles are automatically discouraged back into the coolant reservoir and back out to atmosphere. And so in a way, the system should, functionally, it should be able to burp itself. But many of us have experienced a situation where a car doesn't seem able to do that. Either it can't mount enough pressures, or there's too much air in the system, or the fact the coolant reservoir is lower than the level in the radiator just makes it impossible to properly belch itself. And so we're going to do a system purge to try and get all of the air bubbles out and see if we can get the system working better. So now I've put the vehicle onto jack stands to get the nose in the air, with the intent that any trapped air in the system would rise to the front and escape out the radiator cap. I've installed a no-leak funnel to open the radiator to atmosphere so that the cap can't prevent trapped air from escaping. Now I run the engine until it heats up to the point that the thermostat opens to allow trapped fluid and gas to make its way back to the radiator. Notice how air bubbles are escaping out the funnel as the engine heats up. If you run with the radiator cap off, the system offers no forward pressure to load the water pump, so it's a less efficient system. Therefore, when you do this, you need to be careful not to allow the system to overheat and spray hot antifreeze everywhere out that funnel. I shut the engine off before that happens. Okay, when you're not sure of the diagnosis, often the best thing to do is to go back to first principles. My attempt to try and purge the air out of the system failed because I had air in the system the next day, and so I went back to first principles and I re-examined the system. And I want you to look at what I found. I found a problem with the heater hose right down in this area here. Not sure if it's focusing very well for you, but it's right in there, and if you look at it, you can see evidence that there's been water there. As it turned out, there was one drop, just one drop of coolant right on that hose. And I traced that hose up. The back of the hose is wet. And I traced it up to this device here. Now, this is a device that I installed in my heater hose some years ago to allow me to flush the system properly. And it's worked fine up until now. Now, this system was leaking, and so I thought, well, let's change it. I haven't been short of radiator fluid, but it's a minor leak, but could it be somehow responsible for my gurgling heater core? So I unscrewed the threads, I put on some Teflon tape, I screwed it back in, I let the system sit overnight and start the car the next morning, and voila, problem is solved. Now, why is it that a pinhole leak, just a pinhole leak in that device, in the return heater hose, would make such a difference in terms of that sound? I wasn't significantly leaking fluid, I was just leaking air. And the way I put this together is that the viscosity of fluid is much higher than that of air, and so there's more resistance to fluid leaking out of the system than there is for air leaking in. When the system was hot, I'd park the car, and then when it's parked, as the system cools, there's a negative suction effect on that heater hose. That allows air to leak back into the system, air to get into the heater core, and the next morning when I fire the car up, I get a gurgling sound. I want to thank you for watching. I found this an interesting problem. Talk to you soon.